Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Nina Paley, who is a brilliant filmmaker and artist and co-host of the Heterodorks podcast. This conversation that I am publishing now was recorded late in 2023, like in November or December, and it concerns, at least ostensibly, the dust-up at GenSpec's conference where a man who's a self-professed autogynephile or auto-heterosexual was photographed hugging a detransition woman, and that man was wearing a blue dress. And the GC, or gender critical Twitter, erupted with a lot of people coming down against him being in public, against him being at that event, and somehow forcing everybody to engage in his so-called fetish. Now, I covered this back when it happened. I hosted a conversation between Stella O'Malley and Kelly J. Keene. I had Phil on with Rudy, and I felt like that conversation had been spent, but this conversation between myself and Nina gets into a lot of the weeds about gender nonconformity, her life as an artist, as somebody who doesn't conform, and her positions on men and women in this whole gender conversation. So I'm publishing it now. It's a good conversation. It's just kind of mildly concerning something that's rather dated. But you can find links if you are like some sort of weird archaeologist trying to figure out the ins and outs of the gender wars. I'll have links to the other videos that this is connected to. You can find links to Nina's work down there in the description below, as well as links to tip jars if you want to support this work. Also, liking and sharing is also highly appreciated. Without further ado, here is Nina Paley.
Oof, kitty.
Oh, nice. Wow, look at you.
I know, I'm dressed like a man.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm just like...
Who decides that?
Well, I'm dressed like a man.
Wow.
I was told that no woman would dress like this.
Okay, only a man.
So
yeah.
Only a man would dress like this. So,
well, I didn't consent to being a part of your, whatever this is that you're
my
involving
cross-dressing
in.
fetish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a fetish. What's a fetish? Do you know what a fetish is?
I'm tempted to look up the definition, but
Rhetorically,
it's like a
used.
sexual obsession with something other than actual sex.
Okay.
I think that's what fetish usually means.
Strongly linked to a particular object or activity or part of the body other than the sexual organs. An excessive and irrational devotion or commitment to a particular thing.
Yeah. Like I have a personality fetish.
Oh, you like personalities?
I know. That's a paraphilia. I should only like sex.
Well, you have a lot of personality, Nina Paley.
Well, that makes me very sexy to other personality fetishists.
And you're perpetually cancelable. Like, how many more cancellations are you going to rack? Do you have a bedpost that you notch every time somebody kicks you off of a...
I was asked to recall my cancellations, and I didn't want to do it because every time I don't have them all in one place, and I have to go and look at all these email threads. And I just, every time I get upset again. Today, I got upset. All of the kerfuffle on Twitter, it's more than a kerfuffle. I know people will be offended that I say it's a kerfuffle. But, people calling me a handmaiden and
pick me.
Yeah, all that stuff. I didn't like that, but I was pretty detached from it. But today's cancellation, I just it's like, if anything turns me into the Hulk or something, it's that. It's when I get that stupid email from a coward at a university or festival that's invited me to speak and then rescinds it.
Pretty dang outrageous what they said to you.
They all talk like this, all of them. And I put it on, this time I just immediately put the whole thing on my blog.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the company of courageous people lately, and that makes me have less time for cowardly nonsense.
Yeah, I love how they ended it. So, we at Northeastern University stand for inclusion and diversity. We stand against your stance with turf as expressed on your website and will therefore have to cancel our lecture today and withdraw this invitation. Apologies for the inconvenience. Thanks for your understanding and interest. Parul Wadhwa.
Now, okay, so this is probably an adjunct professor who probably had no idea. I'm going to say she. I don't know if Parul is he or she, but I'm just going to guess she. Probably had no idea what she was wading into. Probably got a scary email from somebody and didn't know what to do. And there's all of this training on campuses for DEI. There is no free speech training. And this person, I don't think this person should be the focus of everybody's ire. I think the university should. But if anything, this person and others like her need to be trained for what to do when you get bullied like this.
Other than pass the buck. That's what she did. They passed the buck.
Did she pass the buck? I mean, they may be suable, Like I don't know what's possible. But to put this all on her, like, I mean, I've been adjunct faculty and they don't really tell you anything. You're sort of on your own. Yeah. And I'm sure they know, like I'm sure she's been diversity inclusion trained, which is why she sent that stupid email. But who's, teaching her, who's training her about how to have maybe a spine or to not capitulate immediately to a bully?
Spinal training? I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah.
Viewpoint diversity training?
Just some sort of free speech. Universities have got to stop this.
Yeah.
And so do festivals, so do cultural institutions. They have to stop it. And it's just like all DEI training, which is, promoting this and nothing balancing it. Can you really blame people who have been told that their jobs depend on being abject cowards, that they act like abject cowards?
Well, cancellation is a really big thing. It's a phenomenon. It's not going to go away. I don't agree with the style of, I guess, democratically deciding who's out of bounds and who's not in bounds. Because it's not really a democracy. It's whoever's the loudest voices in the room with the most, the most egregious claims of harm. Right. This word, this speech, this expression is harmful to me. It makes me feel unsafe.
Yeah, but that that's not what's really happening. It's not the people with the most egregious claims of harm. It's the people who appear to have the most power, the people that appear to have the most numbers, the people who have demonstrated that if they make a complaint, lots of people will join up with them in a mob.
Yeah. And how does one deal with that? And I'm asking somebody who's dealt with that repeatedly over the years.
I mean, how does one as an individual deal with that, or how does an institution deal with that?
Yeah, I guess, well, there's institutions, organizations, and then individuals.
Yeah. I mean, as an individual, I didn't waste any time today just putting it on my blog. I kind of wish I had done that every time this has happened over the last 8 years, but I didn't, because I thought like, I want to maintain, I don't want to burn any bridges.
Yeah.
And like those bridges are on fire. They're not even existent. There are no bridges. Yeah. They have bombed all the bridges. So I have nothing to lose at this point. Sunlight, best disinfectant.
Is it though?
Is it? Yeah. I mean, well, for me at this point, I have just nothing to lose. I don't even know what I would tell a new person who's newly canceled by these sides. And the other thing with cancel culture is I could at any moment be canceled by people who I'm on the same side with now. It's very ironic that this happened today. And by the way, we have not mentioned what happened. Right? Like what happened, or did you mention it, that I was invited to speak to an animation class, blocked out time, on my calendar. This was all arranged. And
Mhm.
then like an hour and a half before I was supposed to do the thing, I got that email.
Yeah.
Uh,
How did the people who yesterday were incised by your stance on a GP gate, which you are very stylishly giving a nod to right now? So the same people who went and targeted GenSpect for apparently platforming a man who allegedly was getting off or expressing some sort of fetish, and then I guess making women feel unsafe at this conference. Like there's a big dust up over that. They're gunning to cancel or to impose some sort of rule, some sort of dress code or something, and I don't know how that actually works out. And then but they were on your side before that happened, and then you get canceled right after they probably express some discontent with your position on. And what is your position?
the irony is that I recorded a Heterodorks podcast yesterday with Shannon Thrace, where we talked about this. It was just me and Shannon. Shannon is a trans widow.
Yeah.
The author of the book 18 Months. And she was not too happy about people asserting some very illiberal policies on behalf of trans widows. She was like, do not speak for me. I talked to Phil. I did not melt. So, you know, we were defending liberal ideals yesterday. And yeah, I do think people should be able to wear what they like. I'm in the J.K. Rowling camp as far as that's concerned, and I always have been. And my issue has been when people assert that humans can change sex, they cannot. When men claim to be women because they're wearing a dress, I absolutely don't believe this. This is, I'm wearing a dress. This is not what makes me a woman. And when you very rigorously defend gendered clothing, that is the opposite of gender critical. I am gender critical. I was just talking to a friend today who talked about how when she was young, she worked for a temp agency, and all the women had to follow a dress code, and that included wearing pantyhose in the summer in Chicago. And she particularly resents men now that do that to get off on it. But for me, I resent gendered clothing. Like, I resent that women had to do that. I'm glad women don't have to do that as much. So I am gender critical. It's like, no, I don't think women should have to dress like this. I don't think women should have to wear pantyhose and stuff. The fact that women have been forced to do that does play into cross-dressers' fetishes. But I think the more you defend rigid gendered clothing categories, the more you're helping the autogynephiles get off, right? You can look at it that way. You can also be like, yeah, it's a dress. Like, it's clothes.
But they would say that it's not about the dress code. It's that this man Phil Illey has expressed that his clothing choices are downstream from his sexuality, which he describes as paraphilic, and they would describe as fetishistic or perverse in one way or another. So once you link the dress, because they'll say, I don't care if the man is wearing a dress, but if the man is wearing a dress and involving me in his fetish, or is getting off on that. But I don't know. That gives a little bit different weight than just like imposing a dress code, but I don't know how you measure arousal.
Right. And by the way, I really appreciate you steel manning this. And I think that a lot of the women who have expressed concerns have legitimate concerns. And I think it's good to talk about this stuff. And really the issue that I took with the whole Twitter blow up was that it was a mob. It was like smelled exactly like the trans activist mobs to me. And maybe it's because it's Twitter, maybe because it's just so difficult to have any kind of nuanced conversation on Twitter, or maybe because there are some demagogues involved with this who are trying to consolidate power and like whipping people into a frenzy. And there are people that like being whipped into a frenzy. But when you're whipped into a frenzy, you can't have sensible conversations. And the fact that people very quickly were calling me a handmaiden,
don't you love
and
that?
a pick me, and saying that I was standing for AGPs, just like I love AGPs. It's like, no, most autogynephilia is not something that I particularly like. I do think that there is a misunderstanding of what autogynephilia is, and that we are aware of the very worst autogynephiles, who are plentiful. Granted, there's a lot of creepy,
and very,
awful,
very, very visible, and making explicit porn, or getting off on beating women in races, or even sometimes like fight rings.
Although non-autogynephilic men also do that. Like, a lot of men are messed up.
Yeah.
and that was a criticism of Phil. Various women have talked to me privately and said, do they know what men are like? Because these normal looking men are probably more perverted than their wildest imaginings, and who even knows what they're getting off on. But anyway, autogynephilia, it's like, yes, like these awful men that enter women's bathrooms and take videos of themselves jerking off in there. Total violation on a number of levels. They have autogynephilia, but they have more than autogynephilia. They probably also have narcissistic personality disorder, which is very commonly associated with that. And also delusional, and a number of other things. So all related to autogynephilia, not that unusual with autogynephilia, but that's not specifically what autogynephilia is. And, even both Shannon and I have had autogynephilic partners. And, I have plenty of critical things to say, but I don't need to turn these people into witches, basically. It's autogynephilia. It's not witchcraft.
Well, what's the difference between a person who wears a dress for attention or a person who's just flamboyant for attention? Like somebody who really gets off on being in the spotlight, making a scene, or being a crooner, right?
Well, that would be me, apparently, because I, bought this outfit, getting attention. What's the difference? I don't know. I don't know. I think what would be good is if you could find one of the women that was really upset by Phil's outfit and just have or I would like to talk to her too, because I think that probably there's important stuff to be discussed about this, not on Twitter.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. It's two different discourse modalities of discourse. But I will be speaking with Kelly J. Keene.
Great!
In a couple of days, so hopefully I can get her to speak about it in a way that is personally or interpersonally. But there was one complaint. There was one young woman who I believe went on Kelly's show and said that just seeing Phil in this conference was really, really difficult for them, and triggered their PTSD. But if you look at that person's Twitter feed, you'll see they're constantly triggered by everything. So who gets to make the rules on who makes who unsafe? And if we want to come down with men in dresses make women feel unsafe, and so men shouldn't wear dresses, then let's go that route. But then let's think through the implications of that.
Yeah, I lived in the Castro, San Francisco in the early 90s. and there were a lot of men wearing dresses around. And that actually expanded my own horizons because at the time I was, for lack of a better word, let's just say I was gender dysphoric
Okay.
as a young person.
Yeah.
And when I was 8 years old, I refused to wear anything that a boy wouldn't wear. So I didn't wear any dresses or skirts or anything like that. And that continued till I was about 17. And but I didn't really wear, women's clothing until I lived in the Castro where the boys were wearing this stuff.
Okay.
And so for me, it was liberating to have men dressed like this. The Castro was a very different place back then.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like strictly enforced gender norms. I am gender nonconforming in a number of ways. I have never been transphobic, which is one reason that I was so hurt initially when people were calling me transphobic. I used to really like trannies.
Originally, like in one of your original cancellations.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had lots of trans friends back in the day, and I liked them because back in the day, they were not expecting validation. Back in the day, they were doing whatever they were doing for their own reasons. And in many cases, they had a lot of spine, and they were good at dealing with people that were not approving of them.
Mm-hmm.
At least among my friends. It was very different. I am 55 years old. I don't know how old you are, Benjamin.
47. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
remember the 90s.
Yeah. So I like weirdos, and I like people who weren't reliant on what other people think of them. And that, of course, has been completely inverted with modern trans activism. What was I getting at here about gender norms?
But when a man wears a dress, that's sending a signal. All clothing is signal, right? Mm-hmm. And you can wear, and one could follow the line, your refusal to wear female clothing could be like wanting to distance yourself from what you perceived of as female sexuality. You wanted to have your own kind of like type. Maybe, I don't know. But why would you cross-dress? It's different. It's different when a girl is a tomboy than when a boy is a sissy boy, which is the old school technical term for it.
Yeah.
There's different motivations going on.
I wasn't crazy about being female, but really I was very aware of what was expected of me as a girl and as a woman, and I hated that. When I was in school, the boys were doing cool creative things, the boys were doing art, the boys were given cameras and could make films. The girls were not. I remember specifically when I wanted to do animation, and there was a Super 8 camera that belonged to the school, my junior high school, I guess. And I asked to use it. And the guy that was responsible for lending it to students just laughed at me. And meanwhile, these boys that I knew were just doing creative stuff. They had these cameras and they had these cool toys and they did arty things. And a lot of the girls, unfortunately, were like doing makeup-y stuff and giggling and trying to attract boys. And I wasn't into any of that. And so, I wanted to make cool stuff. And just because I was a girl, I wasn't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
That's just one example. I mean, people just would not take me seriously. Another way that I have been majorly gender nonconforming is I never wanted children and I was never attracted to babies. So to be acutely aware of like first that I could get pregnant and that I was like, this was a role in life that women were supposed to have. I was horrified by that. No way did I want to do that. And, like I had what we call internalized misogyny as well. Like I thought that I thought these women were kind of stupid, like the caricature of the woman wearing makeup and heels
Mhm.
and things like that she was stupid. And it's like, no, I'm not stupid. I'm smart. There was this idea that boys are smart, girls are stupid.
Mm.
uh, I didn't like any of that.
Did you read Heather Hines' piece
I
on
did.
that? What were your thoughts on that?
Uh, I liked its non-hysterical tone.
Mm. Hmm. Um, I,
And
I, I didn't understand the basis of her morality at the end with regard to it. It seemed like what she came down to, and I love Heather. I know personally. It's not criticism of her, but just of the argument that it came down to something about a social contract. That we have a social contract that, for some reason, Phil violated, and it's not about the dress, but it's about his theories on autogynephilia and his desire, his open desire, stated desire to normalize it so that AGPs don't live in shame. But it all came down to a social contract theory that I don't really understand. And I was wondering what she would have thought had she made a evolutionary biology argument about peacocks, right? Like in peacocks, the male is the one that's really flowery. In humans, it tends to be the female. It tends to be the female that dresses and adorns herself. It tends to be, there's a few cultures that the men are the peacocks. Do you follow me,
yeah, I
or
thought
do
that
you
was
disagree?
culturally dependent. In the West, that's the case, but it hasn't always been the case in the West. And my
Yeah.
understanding is
Yeah.
that
If you think of the powdery
it's,
men from the early times or the 1800s or whatever.
yeah, and from before that even. So I would want more evidence
Yeah.
that it's widespread all over humanity that it's usually the women that are more like that because I would need evidence.
Well, but so dress sends a signal. If we had wound back the clock 20 years, 15 years, and maybe it's just because it's the gender issue that this is a big deal, that Phil would be seen as an oddball, but not that odd. Like there would have been ascribed just either a feeling of cringiness or whataboutness, or, people would ascribe him different intentions. He's attention seeking, or something like that. He's being narcissistic, or he's wanting to be flamboyant, or, or just like, yeah, whatever, it's a guy in the dress. But in this particular context, when we do have autogynephiles doing a lot of reckless behavior, in violating women left, right, and
Mhm.
center. That in that context, Phil's outfit can't be seen as just a man in a dress, and plus he says that he has a sexual compulsion. So I wonder if we can't police dress, or how do we know when somebody's wearing something for the wrong reasons? Because it's not that he's wearing something, it's that he's wearing it for the wrong reasons. How do we know to what extent those reasons are even wrong? Is a woman wanting to look sexy different than a man wanting to look sexy? And is it more
Yes.
is it more socially acceptable in this day and age for a woman to flout her stuff than it is for a man to go the David Bowie Prince route?
Yes, it is more socially acceptable for a woman to flout her stuff because women flouting their stuff are not threats to anyone's safety.
It's an invitation. It's not a declaration of intent.
Yeah, women aren't going to rape people. Women are a lot more vulnerable regarding sex. So a sexy woman is like extra vulnerable, and a sexy man is oftentimes like a little unhinged, right? Like you want the men to
Hmm.
tone down their sexuality in public
Yes. Okay.
because
So,
they can pose a danger
so you
to
would be
others.
of the camp that generally speaking, men, you would prefer if men put pressure, or if society put pressure on men to tamper their displays of sexuality.
I mean, it depends on what that display of sexuality is.
Yeah.
I, you know, I don't even know what counts as a, I don't even know. I mean, I like, or I should say, I know Corinna likes watching burly Irishmen do road work.
Hmm. Okay.
And like, is that a display of sexuality?
It's a
Like
display of
men do
raw
things
animal force.
men do things that are sexy,
Yeah.
like they wash dishes and stuff.
Is that your thing? You just have like video feeds of men washing dishes.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Uh, or they talk about their feelings. Oh my
Oh
God.
no,
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 no, that's
no,
disgusting.
no. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
No, but it's like it's nice to see a healthy, well-formed man doing some useful work,
Yeah.
especially work that requires upper body strength that women don't possess
Yeah.
to such an extent.
Yeah.
Is that like a display of sexuality? I mean, what are we really talking about when we're talking about sexual
Well,
display? Or
the examples you give is pretty interesting because that ties men's sexual viability is being displayed by doing an act of work or service or discipline. Right. So a man is being productive, and so his energy, his libido is aimed in a direction at the material world or at some sort of activity. And then the woman can stand by and like safely judge his interaction with the world and say, well, I'll be his world. Like I'll put myself between him and I'll become his material. He can work on me in a sense, right? And she's judging him for his ability. And this ability is tied up into something useful, and then she makes her maybe an erotic or an intuitive decision on like, well, I would like to be between him and this thing or that thing. But a man who focuses his sexuality on his sexuality, or focuses the libido on his sexuality, then it's like, well, there's a number of different things. Like, how does a woman judge like? Where does his sexuality begin and his usefulness begin? Like, where does sexuality end and his usefulness begin? So there's something slightly narcissistic or self-serving or onanistic, and it's even in the title of heterosexuality. And this is what I pressed Phil on in our second discussion, is that how can a man specifically who gives over himself to this autogynephilia make any sort of sustained connection with another person? Is he not always trapped in some sort of Ouroboros masturbatory activity?
yeah, I mean, we interviewed him too. And I want to say that when I take a stand for liberal values, I am not really, I am defending Phil's right to dress as he wants and share his ideas. I am not attached to Phil's ideas. Mm-hmm. I think that, Phil's a weirdo. I don't agree with some of his ideas. Some of them simply don't make sense to me. I just think that he is on the side of the line that I have drawn.
Okay.
I have drawn a line, which is men do not enter women's spaces, do not take resources that are made for women, do not claim to be women, do not make women call you women or, whatever, treat you like a woman. Don't, no men in women's sports, no men in women's prisons, etc. That's the line that I draw. Phil doesn't do any of that. He can have whatever wacky ideas he wants.
Okay.
And that's it. Like, this is not like, I'm not doing this because like, oh yeah, I think Phil's ideas about autogynephilia are just awesome.
Yeah.
I am, they're his, and I'm glad that he's sharing them. I think actually he may be helping some people. I think that he is offering a model to some men who would otherwise go down a much darker path.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that he is not, he's not like some charismatic person that's enticing men to be autogynephilic if they're not.
Well,
I really hope that's not the case. But for those that suffer from it, I think it's good that they can see that they can be, all right human beings.
they have some wiggle room.
Yeah, without having to go down a medicalization tunnel or without having to violate women's boundaries constantly.
Yeah.
Although some women would say that his wearing a dress is a violation of their boundaries. But then I'm like, well, then you're not gender critical, are you? And I am.
And that's okay. Those women can have their feelings and
they absolutely can. And, like if this were a women's conference, of course he shouldn't be at a women's conference at all because it's a women's conference. If this is like a feminist oriented conference that includes men, that would be another thing. Again, we could say like, well, men in dresses is not feminist. So that's not okay here. This was a Gen Spect conference.
Yeah.
This was about gender and approaches to gender that did not involve medicalization. Phil was not asked to speak. He was an attendee of the conference. And it was adults. There were quite a few trannies there, actually.
There were trannies that nobody would have known or clocked.
There was one. Yes, there was one. And had I not been completely exhausted because I was so massively socially overstimulated at this thing.
Yeah.
But yes, there was one who passed so well. I was just like, my friend was telling me about him. I guess I'll use the sex-based pronouns. And I was like, no, what? Really? What? No. And yeah, I was like really intrigued because, really passing tranny is pretty rare.
And very not self-critical, but investigatory, but really open to like having their ideas like tested. I had about an hour-long conversation. I really pressed them for their reasons why they did this, and then the outcomes, and they opened up, and I wasn't cruel about it because I was just interested. But there are consequences to this choice, or to the series of choices that is packaged in the word transition. It's a very deep thing to go through. One thing that maybe you can help me figure out is, so a few years ago, I did a couple of interviews with this autogynephile, self-identifying autogynephile, Jamie Shoup. He was the first legal non-binary individual in the United States. And I did, Jamie broke gender critical for a while and got some attention, and then kind of disappeared for a while and reached out to me, and we had a second interview. And the autogynephilia, the paraphilia, the sex addiction, it was destroying him. It was absolutely eating him alive. And he was very open and very raw with me. And he expressed just a state of soul, like he was in hell, and he was unable to hide from that. And it was a painful interview, but it was beautiful in the depth of his ability to be vulnerable and to expose himself, suffering from this condition or this inability to not let this desire to be seen and to interact with the world as a woman, and all the porn and the sex that's involved in that. I thought it was a wonderful interview. I thought it was very important for that interview to be out there so that boys specifically and young men specifically can see, whether they're AGP or not, the outcome of feeding that demon that likes to eat porn, and not, I'm sure there's plenty of men who can, give it a couple snacks every once in a while, but there's other men who it will become your driving force. And you need to see this as a cautionary tale. But then there was this supposedly gender critical feminist who decided to make it a point to ridicule and hound this man. And she started doing video after video and just going after him and going after him and getting all of her followers to like tear him down and tear him down and tear him down. And he started to go into, fight mode. And there's a huge dust up. And eventually I had to, I had to suppress those episodes. So those episodes are no longer a part of the public record. I mean, you can find them.
Suppress the episodes?
I shouldn't. I decided to acquiesce to the desire to take them offline for a period of time on behalf of Jamie. But
so the subject was wanting
the subject
to take him down.
The subject wanted me to take him down.
I see.
Because the subject was very scared and had no ability to interact with this really negative attention in a constructive way, and the negative, it was just off the charts. So I understand that, and I see the same kind of venom, or at least the root of the same kind of venom in certain female specifically treatment of Phil. And I know that to a certain extent it's justified to be very, very wary of men that are sending this signal. And I can respect that, and we can make accommodations for that. I'm totally willing to make accommodations, but we need to be very careful how we make accommodations for dress codes. Because like if we're gonna, extreme case, if we're gonna build dress codes around suppressing male sexuality, there's this thing called the hijab or the hijab or whatever it is, and that's probably what's going to happen. Like we'll just suppress women's sexuality because that is what excites men the most, right? That's a plausible outcome if we're not really careful about how we police each other's free expression. But I understand. So I understand
what happened.
My freaking cat stepped on. He stepped on the thing that plugs everything in. Oh shoot!
I was watching the cat walk around behind you. It's really cute, or she, it.
Sorry, I'm being long-winded, and my cat told me to shut up. So I'm going to get to the question.
You're talking about these mean women. They can be so mean.
They can be really mean. I don't think it's particularly in their favor to act this way or in the favor of the cause in this way. And every time you point out that their tactics aren't benefiting anybody or their tactics involve too much emotionality, they get really, really mad because you're never supposed to point out that emotions are something to be controlled and to be used.
I will say that
which is
I would never advise a man to say to an angry woman, calm down, you're being really emotional. Yeah. That would be very stupid.
Why? If it's true.
Well, I mean, you could poke a bear and be like, well, it's true. It's, I've been an angry, when I am angry, when my hackles are up and I'm really emotional, the last thing I want is for someone, particularly a man, to say, calm down. I don't know if I have to justify why that is. Just take my word for it.
No, I understand.
It's a bad idea.
But there's no ability to have an actual conversation about any issue if it's being dominated by emotion. And so what do? You're just like, okay, I'll wait for you, dear. Like either you condescend or you say, listen, you are not being productive in this conversation. And plus you're destroying avenues of restitution that could be viable for us. I know that a number of trans people that are, involved in the Gen Spec circle are like saying, I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this shit, our mutual friend among them, because it's like even the allies are being
you can't do any, like, so the thing is,
so you just don't do anything.
Like when an individual is flooded with stress hormones or whatever, and being crazy and emotional. That's difficult. Now you have like a whole mob. What do you do about a whole mob? You cannot go up to a mob and say, calm down, be reasonable.
Of course.
And in fact, with the Twitter mob, I really did not interact with this mob very much. I said a few things that I thought were true, that I just wanted to say. But when people were being bonkers, I did not say, hey, you're being bonkers. Yeah. I did say that this feels very familiar. I think I quoted someone. It's like, this feels familiar. What I was referring to was when trans activists did exactly the same thing. And that's it. And you cannot reach people when they are hyped up like that. You cannot reach people when they're in a mob or in a cult. And so all you can do is tell the truth and wait. But don't try to get a response from them.
All right. Just let it go. It just seems that men's issues, there will be moments when I don't know what to call them, gender critical, radical feminists, or whatever this group is that has most lately been excited.
They're not gender critical. I just can't call them gender critical.
Okay.
Because they are arguing in favor of gender, which is not bad, by the way. You know what? I think it's fine if feminists, hardline feminists, want to argue in favor of gender. There's a reason gender exists, right?
Thank you.
It's a kind of boundary.
Yeah.
It's a symbolic boundary. It's like symbolic space.
It's a linguistic,
like they're treating the dress like it is a woman's space, and that Phil wearing a blue velvet dress is like violating women's space. And to some extent, symbolically, maybe that's the case, right? Like if and having these symbolic spaces maybe serves to protect physical spaces more, because when somebody violates the symbolic space, then, you know, your alarms go off from that prior to them violating the physical space. That's just an argument I could think of, right? But like, let's have that argument. Let's not call this gender critical when it's not gender critical. It's gender conservative. They're not politically conservative, but they're gender conservative. And, you know, reasons for it. There's reasons for it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what to call them. They don't like being called mad femmes, obviously. But
why would they not want to be called mad femmes? It's a perfect play on words, and it's absolutely descriptive. I don't understand what their issue is with that.
Well, it makes them mad.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's the self-reinforcing definition.
But then some, like Kelly J. Keane, doesn't call herself a feminist, and certainly not a radical feminist. So it's not a play on her, but she does, you know, epitomize this position of, you know, like these gendered symbols are for women, and that when men violate them, that is a warning sign. It's a warning sign we should heed. Okay. It's not without merit.
Yeah. So where would you want the culture to go? Do you think that a kind of a frosting over or conservativization of gender expression is a necessary resetting tool?
You know, I don't know. It doesn't really matter where I want culture to go. Like where I want culture to go is for people to learn how to disagree with each other without flipping out. That's about it. You know, I want people to stop canceling and stop trying to silence other people and just learn to have disagreements. Because I don't even know what's fully right or wrong. There's a lot of different people, different interests,
different contexts.
Yeah. So I don't have an answer for the whole world, but I really don't like the discourse.
Yeah.
And
but at the same time, you would prefer a world where men are restraining their sexuality or demonstrating their virility in a way that's less sexy or sexually appealing, such as a dress.
Well, most men, I think, like, the fact is that a man in a dress really isn't that sexually appealing. It's not.
No, it's kind of silly. It's just
Not to
silly.
actually, it's silly, right? I'm in favor of silly.
Okay.
I like silly a lot. Yeah. So like one way I'd like society to go is to get a sense of humor again.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, but so it's not that I want people to be messed up. It's just that a lot of people are messed up. And what are we going to do in a world with a lot of messed up people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, uh, there has to be some degree of tolerance, and people draw the line at different places.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I understand that. It's just, I have drawn my line. I know what I care about. It's like,
Yes.
do not make me lie about, do not make anyone lie about sex.
Yeah.
I have for a long time said, you are free to identify however you wish. You are not free to force me to identify you the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that means, if I mean that, that means people are free to identify however they wish.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to identify in some ways that I think are really delusional and not right. And it's
What
not that I like people being delusional. It's just that I think that, you know, people are delusional, and to some extent we have to tolerate that.
what's your level of discomfort with a man being motivated by sexuality in his expressions, I guess?
I mean, they
His
all
dress.
are. Almost every man is motivated by sexuality
Okay.
for like everything. Right? I mean, that's why
Well,
people
that's the
play.
answer.
That's why they play music and do anything useful in this world, is
Yeah.
because they want to get laid.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what was it? It was Frank Zappa who said that. Like, he said something like his band members, you know, they're doing it to get laid, but they have to do the job right, and then they can get laid.
I guess that's another aspect of I mean, I pointed out that most of this is about policing male sexuality, which is fine. If they want to police male sexuality, that's fine. I wish they could be honest about this, that this is about policing male sexuality, and that
Male
if we
sexuality has to be policed, I think.
it does have to be policed, but if we're going to be honest about it, and then there's got to be a back and forth between that, you know, because I don't see the same women arguing for if a woman showed up in a halter top and no bra on, they wouldn't have done a thing. So it's a one-way street, and I need to control my sexuality, or I need to control my response to a woman's clothing, but these women don't need to control their response to Phil's clothing. And they're like, and I'm aware that there's an asymmetry, and I'll agree with the reasons for the asymmetry. I just want the asymmetry to be out there in the open, and then we can talk about it, because that's what the interesting thing about this whole gender sex thing. It's like men and women are different in a whole lot of ways, and that's what makes the whole world go round. Is that asymmetry? It's like keeps on this checks and balances thing. That's the fun part of it for me.
Just is. But yeah, I mean, the whole rise of transgender ideology has made me much more aware of and accepting of the differences between men and women.
Yeah.
But you know, not in every realm. You know, sex matters. It doesn't matter everywhere for everything, but where it matters a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. What about things that you want to shill, since I have you and my audience is listening?
Well, of course, I should pull things. Do you have a moment for me to pull out items?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take some
just
items.
one moment, please.
I love your items.
Then you can see the whole outfit.
Yeah. Dance for me, Nina. She can't see me.
You know, blue is not my color. I don't have any blue clothes. I got these blue clothes just because I wanted to dress like a man.
Phil Illy should have started a clothing line to capitalize on this magic moment that the Mad Femmes have handed him. They handed him so much publicity.
I know.
I pointed that out and they got really mad at me. I'm like, no, this is how publicity works. Are you guys so thick as to not understand that you are his advertisers now? Well, whatever.
Yeah, he was much more unknown before, and now it's like this is a moment in the gender world. Like everyone knows who Phil Illy is now. Right. So merch. I have the famous Gender Wars playing cards.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to show my open pack. So all these, your favorite gender characters.
Buck Angel.
I've been threatening to
Andrea
make.
Long.
This is an important card.
Purity Spiral. Oh God, Purity Spiral.
I've been saying that I'm going to make a 2024 edition to include all these people that weren't in this deck.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I am, because I'm a little tired of how stupid how stupid the gender world is right now. Yeah. On the other hand, getting canceled made me very energetic again. Just like I got it from both sides, you know, like one side saying I'm a tranny lover and the other side saying I'm a bigoted.
Yeah, people are suspecting that I'm AGP because I dared to question the mob. So I'm probably wearing my wife's panties now. Like what?
They say Corinna's AGP too.
Corinna's special.
Corinna's a gay man.
Yeah, Corinna's very gay. Corinna's very gay.
Yes.
Gamer.
Yeah. I have the Agents of Hag comic. These are on sale. I'm having a 10% off turf sale right now at store.ninapaley.com. And then I also have some issues left of Compliance Comics, the completely safe and compliant version of Agents of Hag. Yeah. Because Agents of Hag was canceled by Indiegogo. Speaking of cancellations. By the way, before I was canceled, I was a semi-famous filmmaker.
Yeah.
Who made this film called Sita Sings the Blues.
Such an awesome film.
DVDs. Yeah, it's really pathetic now that I'm more famous as a TERF than as an artist and filmmaker.
It's a phenomenal film. I can't believe you did that all by yourself. It's so intricately intense and beautiful.
Yes, and I'm also a free culture advocate and activist, and so my work is available online for free. However, if you just get it at a random place like YouTube, there might be ads on it from which I get no money. So please go to SitaSingsTheBlues.com or SatyRmasochism.com for my second feature film, Satyr-Masochism. It's all free. I want you to watch it, but please don't watch it on YouTube where they silence some of the songs or monetize. And then I have this, which is the most cool merch I've ever made. These are the Apocalypse animated cards. Yeah. All of this stuff is for free at apocalypseanimated.com, but the actual cards, so great. You know, you have to actually pay money for. But I was really thrilled to make these because I've been fascinated with lenticulars ever since I opened a box of Cracker Jacks. And it's like, wow, I'm a grown-up now and I can actually make my own of my own.
What a great technology.
And I need to move these because they cost me a ton of money and I have not recouped my
yeah, I bet they're very expensive. They're so well done.
But they're so cool.
They are.
Cool. And you know, the shopping season is upon us.
Oh, it is.
If you want to surprise someone with a gift that
these are store.ninapaley.com.
Unusual. Yes, store.ninapaley.com. Yeah, anyway, there's
hypnotizing. More. And what are you working on in the coming year?
I am deciding whether I'm going to do the 2024 edition of the Gender Wars cards, and I may or may not do those depending on how I feel. And I have the beginnings of a new project, which I am calling The Story of Jesus.
Oh.
I am interviewing people, asking them to tell me the story of Jesus. As if I'm an alien, like I've never heard of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's very hard for people because almost everyone has heard of Jesus. So people talk about the story of Jesus as though we know who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And I'm really going like, yeah, you know, who is this character? You never heard of him before.
Yeah. And is this going to be animated or what?
Maybe. I mean, it's exploratory right now, so I'm interviewing people. I would be happy to interview you.
Oh, I'd love
to. Especially because you have your own recording apparatus.
Yeah.
And at this point, I am just finding what, like, story points people's stories have in common.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm comparing and contrasting different responses to that. And I don't know if it's going to turn into something or not, but I have for a long time wanted to do something about scapegoats because I am a scapegoat, and this whole cancel culture thing is this very primal make somebody a scapegoat thing. I would say Phil is like the scapegoat of this thing. Not even of GenSpect, because the conference was fine. And it was just super weird that it was a photo of him that caused all this outrage of people that weren't even at the conference.
Yeah.
But he is functioning as a scapegoat. It just seems like groups of people, find a target, and it bonds them together more. Like scapegoating creates communities. But I don't like being a scapegoat.
Yeah.
It's very painful, but it seems to be part of human nature and group nature. So I was like, well, what's a myth about a scapegoat? And I was like, well, the best known scapegoat story is the story of Jesus.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when people tell me the story of Jesus, they don't really tell the story of a scapegoat. They hit a lot of other story points, but they don't hit that part.
It's
and many of them don't even mention the braying mob.
It's one of the founding mythoses of Christianity, which is one of the founding religions of the West. So having a collective scapegoat for the entire world is a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah. But remember that in the Hebrew scapegoat ritual, there were two goats. There was the scapegoat and the sacrificial goat. So
what happened to the scapegoat?
The scapegoat gets ejected.
Okay.
So the scapegoat gets the sins of the community placed on its head, and then it gets sent into the wilderness or driven off a cliff. So it gets pushed out. The sacrificial goat gets slaughtered on an altar for God.
Yeah, and God goes nom nom nom.
God, a sweet savor unto the Lord. God likes that.
So would you rather be a scapegoat or a sacrificial lamb?
I mean, to me, they're pretty similar. I don't know if you've seen my second film, Sadomasochism.
I have not seen that.
Oh, well, go to sadomasochism.com and click download, and you can see it. But I depicted myself as a lamb on an altar that's burning because I'm talking to God the Father, which is the voice of my father shortly before he died. And I depicted him as God the Father. So it's like, how do we communicate with God the Father in the Old Testament? Via a sweet savor unto the Lord.
Always rich in symbolism, Nina.
I love myths.
Yeah.
I love stories that have been honed by humanity over hundreds or even thousands of years.
Yeah. I got this woman telling the origin of myself and Leslie's mine and Leslie's love affair, and she's been talking about us since June, and she makes these little 2 to 5 minute videos, and she's totally insane, but she keeps on going over and over and over again about how we're the cringiest, creepiest love story ever told.
Aww.
I'm gonna do a supercut, and then I'm gonna try to get it animated because it's really something special. But she's like trying to hone this mythology of us.
Well, it's not a myth until a whole lot of people have processed it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just a crazed ranting right now. And by the way, myths are not necessarily untrue. It's not like myth and fact. They're just stories that
or even
have
history.
Significance.
No. But I mean, I as a writer, well, in my previous life I was a writer, and it took me a really long time to get to myth. But I had to tell a story over and over and over and over and over again until it had that ring of myth. I think it's possible to concentrate your efforts to create a myth, but generally speaking, yes, a myth is something that has been aged. A myth is a story that's been distilled, expanded, expanded over and over and over again until it like gets to a certain sort of like, it's a very fine kind of pastry of the imagination kind of thing.
And it's got to be collective, I think.
You think it's got to be collective?
Yeah, I don't think it can be a. What was it? Joseph Campbell said, "A dream is a private myth, and a myth is a public dream." So when it's individual, it's a dream. He said something like that.
Yeah.
I think, but that's filtered through my very faulty memory. So.
Yeah. Well, keep on standing up for the individual against the mob and for the collective dream. And the individual myth, I don't know.
Something like that.
Okay.
Well, thanks for having me on. Mostly I wanted to wear this outfit, the only blue outfit.
Well, there we go.
I own.
Thank you for giving me a shot of it, too. We got the full body length, and people got to see me ogling you.
That's right. I'm not restraining my sexuality. That's your job.
Yeah, no, yeah. Like, I didn't ask for consent, but I'm going to publish it anyways and subject everybody else to non-consensual paraphilia. Paragliding? Because you just kind of glide around, just like your paraglide.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thank you. I want to say thanks for listening, TERFs and trannies, but it's not my podcast.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Nina. And I don't know if trannies is a word that I can say on my podcast, but we're going to see.
Right. The Heterodorks podcast. If any of your listeners have not listened to the Heterodorks podcast, I do that with Corey Cohn. And we have our own flavor of whatever it is we are.
It's a great show. It's a great show. You guys check it out. Links will be in the description. Nina Paley, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Have a good night.
Good night.